friends and other guests and participants. Welcome to our group discussion with APAMS 40. My name is Gobet Advincula, or formerly Rigoberto Advincula. I was a professor at Case Western Reserve University for 8 years. 10 years before that at University of Houston, and we'll hear from my friend Arnold, who's a professor at University of Houston. And I recently moved to Oak Ridge National Laboratory and University of Tennessee, Knoxville. So I'm here to lead together with Mike, and I'll let Mike introduce himself. Then we can talk
Okay,
more.
okay. Thank you, Gobet. This is Michael Pruganen here, and as Gobet said, I am co-hosting, co-moderating this really exciting not seminar series, but session. And just as a background for people who don't know, I actually went to UP Diliman. I'm a graduate from '85 in chemistry, and then I went to the United States. I got my master's in chemistry at Columbia, and then went on to get my PhD in Georgia. I did faculty positions at North Carolina State University, and then NYU pirated me about 14 years ago. So I moved back to New York City. I was dean of science at NYU from 2012 to 2019. So I've now escaped, and I'm now back to being a faculty member. I'm the professor of biology at NYU. And so thank you. And the way we're going to do this is Gobet is going to really moderate the first half, although I'll be here as well. And then I'll take over on the second half after the first Q&A session. So I think Gobet, take it away.
All right. So we have an exciting session. I know some of you have been following from day one, and it's been 2 weeks. All the exciting and interesting things going on with the conference. Hopefully, we'll get a recording of this session, and those who will be listening in the future will catch more in documentation. And the interesting thing here is we have a group of panelists, experts representing different fields as well as experiences in STEM education from both the Philippines and, of course, the US. And we have experiences collectively in the international field, the different science and engineering priorities. Actually, out of this, we hope that our audience who will ask questions can participate and ask relevant questions. If not, we have some prepared questions to give a cue on what's interesting and what's important for our topic. So we have several speakers, and I'll begin with Giovanni Tapang, Dean Tapang of the College of Science, UP Diliman. And actually, between us, several of us, we're graduates of UP as well. Between Mike, me, and Arnold, we're actually graduates of UP Institute of Chemistry, but all the way back to Manila Science High School.
Oh
So
God, yes, that's true. The three of us from Manila
see all
Science High School.
these
There's
interesting
no
and dangerous.
nepotism here. There's no nepotism.
Yes, no, but okay, we'll stop there. So Giovanni is an expert in optics, complex systems. He'll definitely give us a little more about his background and research, but certainly we'd like to hear, of course, his experience leading the college and reprioritizing graduate education and experiences. On the other hand, we have Kokoy Dizon, or John Ryan Dizon, who's a professor at Bataan Peninsula State University. Um, he is an expert in engineering, mechanical, and in fact, he spent some time in my lab at Case Western on 3D printing. And he is an expert in 3D printing and materials. And he has successfully launched his own center, 3D printing center in Bataan Peninsula State University, having outreach in the greater area of Luzon. and bringing the ecosystem of 3D printing. So, between our two speakers, and Mike will do a very thorough job too with regards to defining the topics and introducing our speakers. What we really want is to have the opportunity to speak about what it takes to mentor, to establish a system, to have a short term and long term plan to help our uh, students or help our Filipino kababayans really to make the most of the opportunities available and point them towards science engineering. So I think I would like to give more floor to our speakers and more questions. So if you're ready, Dean Tapang, Giovanni, I'll give the floor to you. I'll give reminders as far as our time, just to keep us on focus, and also um, outline of our time, and then we'll have more questions and answer session. So, Dean
Just
Tapang,
before you start,
okay.
Dean Tapang, just for all of the people who are on Zoom, if you could mute unless you're ready to ask questions, or so that we don't get interrupted. Thank you.
Mhm. A good thing you reminded Mike about that, and also in terms of questions, you can also use the chat uh, box, and I will be checking that, and I'll be happy to read the questions for the audience. Okay, so we can have Giovanni start.
Good umaga, good morning to everybody, and good evening to the other people at the other side. Um, so I'm going to present something about with the question of how to get to 30,000. I'll explain the number later. But I, I was a student through and through of the UP, and I'm a product of um, this institution, which actually shaped how we also approach on generating the science and technology human resources here in the Philippines from the point of view of UP. So I'm from the College of Science. I'm the dean for around 375 days already. Um, and the College of Science is one of the has one of the highest concentration of PhD faculty in the Philippines today, around 176 of us. Um, and mainly the functions of a college really is to generate high quality graduate and undergraduate students, to do basic and applied scientific research, and of course to, to render technical extension services, of which we are doing right now in this COVID pandemic. A lot of our faculty and our researchers are doing work on COVID, and actually also even in trying to figure out model the spread here in the Philippines of um, the the virus. Now, this three main functions of the College of Science has been we have been doing this for around uh, 37 years already, and since 1983. The College of Science has grown to already to around 9 institutes. Um, and these 9 institutes, the NIP, the National Institute of Geological Science, the Marine Science Institute, Institute of Biology, Institute of Chemistry, NIMBB, the Institute of Mathematics, the Environmental Science Institute, and there are two new programs, the Material Science and Engineering program and the Science and Society program. All of these are being, if they are not already giving degrees, are being steered towards giving PhD programs for each of these departments. Of course, we have the Computational Science Research Center, as well as the library and the National Science Research Institute, which comprise the whole of the College of Science, which has grown, as I mentioned earlier, since 1983. Now, the 30,000 number came from NAST bulletin in 2016. They mentioned in that bulletin that the Philippines would need around 3,000 new PhDs each year for the next 10 years. And I was part of the team of Dr. Perry Ong 2 years ago, and we were looking at the numbers of are we actually able to reach this 30,000, and what's the contribution of the College of Science to this number? If the NAST is looking for 30,000 new PhDs for the next 10 years, um, how will we be able to contribute to generating our part here in this generation of PhDs in the country? Now, how many do we produce? UP Diliman as a whole produce only 64 PhDs per year. Out of these, only 13, 1-3, come from the CS, around 4.3 from engineering. And therefore, the number of 3,000 per year is something very difficult to attain um, if UP Diliman is one of our benchmarks of how to produce PhDs in the country. Of course, it's not the only university, but if you take it as a yardstick, we really have to produce more so that we will be able to reach that 3,000 in the next 10 years. Now, right now, the enrollment of PhD students is really not that large, and even the mentoring of the PhDs per faculty is not uniform all throughout the um, the institutes in the College of Science. Even this is even more. Um, the numbers are even more dismal if you look at the other colleges in the university. Now, the reason why I pointed this out and I wanted to put this out there is because one of the things that we want to do is to optimize the PhD production here in the College of Science. In the span of 10 years, only 1 out of 3 enrollees in the MS program in the whole of the College of Science finish. Only 1 out of 5 finish their PhD. And we can actually divide the number of years of the whole history of the College of Science into 4 parts. The gray part there is the one just before um, the breakup of the College of Arts and Sciences, where you had really very low production of PhDs. Then the green part there is just the formative years of the College of Science from 1983 to 1989, and then from 1989 to 2009, 1999, and then the next decade, which is the one that I quoted for numbers. Um, the green one is just the fresh numbers for this graduation. Um, let's see the averages for the first era. It's just 1.31 PhDs per year. So at that time, um, ginto ang pagiging PhD. Very rare that you have people enrolling in the PhD program, and very rare do you have them finishing. Now, that changed when the College of Science became a uh, uh, separate college, and the number rose to around 8 per year, and then it stabilized to around 13 per year for the next 2 decades. Now, uh, we have 17 for this year, and hopefully we will maintain that high number. Um, there are people who graduate and finish despite the pandemic, and people are trying to find out ways to do and continue their research and still publish despite the limitations that is imposed by the work from home um, in the university. Now, of course, to answer the question of how many PhDs do we need to produce from the point of view of the uh, university, um, well, it really takes a mentor to produce that PhD student. Even if you have a very uh, enthusiastic student, if there's nobody who's going to mentor them, they will either drop out of the program or move on to other universities. And therefore, for us to be able to maintain and graduate the students, um, the faculty should be able to sustain the student economically, should sustain the student intellectually, to give them a novel and interesting idea that will pan out to give the PhD dissertation. There has to be the infrastructure, the laboratory in that field, or a field area for the field biologist, and that the student will also be able to continue on the program without worrying about its economic status. Now, going back to that problem, one of the, of course, one of the things that you can increase is to increase the number of PhDs. The number of faculty items in the College of Science is around 300, and we only have 176 PhDs. And there's room to double that without even changing the plantilla of the university. And um, this is a government institution. It's not so easy to get items, and therefore, just converting those instructors to PhDs, and those instructors' positions can be filled up with teaching assistants and teaching fellows. Then you can actually immediately be able to increase the number of PhDs that you can recruit in the next 10 years. And hopefully, these faculty who will be coming in would also be mentoring students and getting students into the programs. Now, we call this the Saloma rule. Typically, the PhD student graduation rate is one student in 3 years. So even looking at that number, if you have 300 uh, 300 faculty, um, divided by 3, that's 100. You should be expecting at least 100 PhDs, and the number of 17 is very far from that 100. That means really that not all PhDs are doing their mentoring work. We do publish, but that publication does not necessarily carry with it students, or is being done with a student that is getting towards a PhD uh, degree. And therefore, that has to be something that is to be solved. Some fields really do. Um, uh, it's easy to be able to do that on your own without involving students, but we are really talking to each, literally talking to each faculty and trying to figure out what their problems are with regard to mentoring or taking in students. The other side, of course, of the problem is the research funding. Most of the funding of the College of Science is coming from the DOST or from the government. And even if you have external funding from private sources, if it becomes, if it goes through the university, then we are bound with 9136, RA 9136, which is the procurement law, which is very, very stringent in terms of doing procurement. There are ways already being done to um, facilitate and make this as fast as we could, but still, that's a big problem in trying um, to liquidate or to use up the funding that you get. Um, then the other one is, of course, we need to have students, and um, the other side is that we usually depend on undergraduates to who we can convince to go to graduate school. But even in my lab, it's only half of my undergrads go to MS, and half of those MS go to PhD. Therefore, if I want to have two PhD students every year, then I have to have four MS. I have to have eight BS every year, and that is actually going to be very large if you think about the size of the laboratories here in the Philippines. Of course, the one that we would like to do with if the pandemic did not happen is that um, we'd like to go out and go to state colleges and universities, recruit the faculty that they want to be developed into our graduate programs, and this becomes our graduate student feeder for our PhD programs. Of course, international students from collaborations would also be another source of these graduate students for our PhDs. How much does it cost? This slide I prepared really for a pitch for increased funding. Um, so typically, if you want to have one PhD or a research assistant, uh, our colleagues in the US would probably see this very uh, their salary is really small. This is in pesos. It's 420,000. Typically, they have to pay tuition for their graduate program. It's not free, unlike the undergraduates. They have to have at least one conference that they could go into, and of course, the research cost. On the average, we computed. Of course, it's field specific, but on the average for the whole of College of Science, around half a million a year is on the average the cost of doing research in the country. That is on top of what your PIs would have. Of course, your PIs, you have to pay them. You have to also give them research support as well as travel costs. And all of these would amount to around um, 1.7 or so million for an RA, and around 2 to 2 million, 2.5 million for PI, excluding their salaries, which is of course um, government salaries at the and with the recent increase in the salary standardization law, the rates of being a professor, assistant professor, and up in the university is not that bad if you compare it to when I started teaching with 6,000 pesos a month. Doing research, of course, is you have to have funding, and the total funding of the College of Science, the faculty of the College of Science, is actually quite large. It's been increasing for the past few years, and it has already reached around 1.6 billion. Of course, this is new grants coming in that year. Um, so if you look at it, where does this 1.6 billion go? Some of it, of course, is shared money with other institutions like UP Manila, the Philippine Genome Center, and other groups. But most of these are managed by faculty in the college, and that's not a small number. But the question really is, if you have that large amount of money, why is it not producing a large amount of students as a result? Of course, we'll go back to the problem of, well, the project leaders are not really taking in students, they're just taking in research assistants and not funding them for their graduate studies, but funding them to finish the projects. Publications hovered around 200 to 250. And if you take into account that you have 176 faculty, that would be around 1.2, at least of the last year, 1.2 papers per year. We could do more, but this is also a function of not everybody is doing their part of writing up the papers and publishing them. Now, what would it take to produce more PhDs? Now, even if you double the number of PhD faculty mentors in the next 10 years, um, each professor should be taking in students either as the usual formula here in the Philippines. You take an MS and then your PhD, or there is a straight PhD program, which is 5 years, but typically the average is 7 years. Um, and what we plan to do is to increase the PhD faculty by 12 to 13% each year, so that we would be able to reach the numbers that is required to um, have 500 PhDs. Um, the UP system is actually open to hiring more PhDs, either permanent positions or to have uh, fellow positions here in the university, and they're trying to change some of the rules um, with regard to hiring, which would make it easier for us to do collaborative work with other um, kababayans as well as other experts from abroad. Now, uh, if you extrapolate the number that we have been computing earlier on how much would it take to produce uh, around 2,000 PhDs for the next 10 years, then we would need to um, around 3.6 billion per year, or around 35 to 36 billion in 10 years. If you look at the budget of the Philippines, this is not really large for a trillion um, peso budget. This is for 10 years, spread out in 10 years, and therefore the investment to produce 2,000 PhDs is something that is doable, um, and is something that can be lobbied for. And we are trying to exert our best efforts to reach out um, to our Congress to provide funding, uh, partial or wholly, for this approach to increasing our number of PhDs. Um, the other side of increasing graduate students is to also reduce the attrition rate. We have an attrition rate of 50% overall. Um, and if we were able to reduce that to even just 15%, then we will be able to get 2,000 PhDs in the next 10 years. Um, how large is 2,000 compared to the 30,000? Of course, it's not even a tenth of it. But this is something that we have a doable plan for the next few years, and hopefully that will not only show that we can reach those numbers, and these are not just um, numbers pulled out of a hat. These are actual numbers that you can uh, work towards to, and so that the the numbers of 17 PhDs per year would be just memory, just like the earlier part that I was showing historical numbers for the College of Science. Um, Graduate mentoring output, 1 out of 3, I mentioned that already, finish their MS, 1 out of 5 finish their PhD. 1 out of 6 graduate students in the College of Science are PhD students. The MS dropout rate, this is just those who officially drop out. We're not even counting those who are continuing for 7, 8, 9 years and just vanishing from their program. These are the official dropout rates at 14, 12% for the PhDs. And the average number of years to do a PhD is 4 years with an MS. The average MS number of years for an MS is 3. So on the average, if you take it 4 plus 3.1 is to have a PhD from your BS it will take you 7 years. There are people who could do it faster. Erica, ilan taon ka? So I think
5,
uh,
5 for me. Two,
years.
two for MS and 3 for the PhD.
The NIP could do it fast, but on the average, the College of Science would have 7 years um, for their MS and PhD. So, what would it take to reach that 30,000? We have to double the number of mentors. We have to have consistent research funding, not just from the government, from UP, but other project sources as well. And to have graduate student feeder schools to increase the number of graduate students coming in the university. So that will be all, and I will be open to your questions later.
Thank you, Giovanni, Dean Tapang. Excellent. And we gained a lot from the background, the needs, and also the challenges. In particular, I was impressed by the effort that you put the background and therefore the way and the need to increase the number through both research opportunities, additional funding from the national government, and of course the feeder schools. We have in this program question and answer after our second talk. So I guess I'll just reserve that time for more questions from us, the panel, and of course the audience. But let me go ahead and give the space and time to Professor Dizon from Bataan Peninsula State University. And as I said, after his talk, we'll open the session for more questions and answers. Kokoy, you can share your screen.
Yes, sir. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, you can do a full screen or you can.
Can you see my slides now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Just kindly click on the presentation so
Okay.
that it will begin presentation.
Okay. Good morning. Yeah. I'll be talking about the status and challenges of STEM education in SUCs. I would like to thank the hosts, Dr. Mike and Dr. Gobet, for inviting me to present this very important topic. Uh, Me as a member of a faculty in State University, this will also be very be beneficial for the whole country moving forward. So the outline of my talk would be, I would like to quickly define STEM education and then the landscape of higher ed in the Philippines, status of STEM tertiary education, some DOST or government programs in support of STEM education, challenges of STEM education in high schools and colleges, that is common challenges, and some strategies, and also lastly what needs to be done, as Dr. Tapang mentioned, some are related to his what he shared a while ago. So STEM education is, as we all know, is an interdisciplinary approach to learning where STEM concepts are coupled with real world lessons. Real world means you can apply it in school, community, work, and enterprise, especially to help in economic growth. Let me briefly discuss the landscape of higher education in the Philippines. This is from CHED website. So if you can see on the left side is these are the distribution of higher education institutions by institution type. This excludes the SUC satellite campuses. So for SUCs, we have a total of 111 all over the Philippines, including Bataan Peninsula State University, Batangas State University, and others. Local colleges here are, for example, I think Pamantasan and also the Manila, Universidad ng Makati, Universidad ng Manila, and many others. SUCs, for example, in BPSU, we have 5 or 6 campuses. So if you add that into this number, the total of campuses that we have for the SUCs would be around 541. I think Palawan State U, I think they have around 20 campuses in the island of Palawan. So I think what's important to look at is this figure on the left. How many state universities are there in the Philippines? We have 111. And if you add that to 118, we have around 200 government-funded universities and colleges, compared with this 1,700 total number of private higher education institutions. So these are the comparisons. For the regional distribution, we can see here that Central Luzon, where Bataan Peninsula State University is located, and also Calabarzon, especially NCR, these three regions, just 3, 4A, and 13, have the most number of higher education institutions or tertiary institutions. By STEAM discipline, in here, this is from SHED, they included agriculture, so it became STEAM here. We can see here that for science, this includes, this is for the blue one is for the SUCs, red is for the LUCs, and the green one is for the private. You can see here that private institutions, which are mostly located, the large ones are located in Manila, have a relatively higher number of enrollees. For technology, for SUCs, the blue one, and including the red one for the LUCs, you can see a higher number of enrollment. This is probably because most SUC started as technology or vocational schools 30, 40, 50 years ago and converted into state colleges or state universities. For example, Bataan Peninsula State University, I think this was established in the 1950s, and it was a technology school where they taught welding, machining, foundry, and other skills. For engineering, still the private institutions have higher enrollees compared with the local and the state universities. But I think this will, the number of enrollees will increase soon, also due to the free tertiary higher education program of this administration. For agriculture, these are the values or the number of enrollees, and for mathematics, these are the number of enrollees. So as you can see here, this slide shows the higher education enrollment in STEAM disciplines. So this includes science, technology, engineering, agriculture, and mathematics. Please take note that we started, the Philippines started the new basic ed program, the K-12 program, in I think in 2016. So this is the first year. 2016 was the year, the first year of the senior high school students started, and then this is the first year, 2018, where we started accepting first year students for the new curriculum for basic ed and for tertiary education as well. So we can see an increase in enrollees over the past 2 years. So higher education enrollment by STEAM discipline. So for STEAM, including agriculture, which includes 107,000 in 2018-2019 academic year, so we have around 1.1, 1.2, 1.2 million enrollees. If we sum up all the college students, I think we'll have at least 3 million, including other programs like education, management, and others. So higher education enrollment by institution type. Okay, so we can easily add these numbers of students, and probably there are around 3 million. These are the total number of students. So we can see 52% from are enrolled in the private universities and colleges, 40% or 46% in government institutions. So just a quick peek on the comparison of male and female students for all the institution types. These are the top 5 disciplines in terms of enrollment. So medical and allied, IT, engineering, business administration, education, and teacher training. So business ad and education have the most number of enrollees. For graduates, it's the same case. Education and the business ad would have the most number of graduates. Highest degree attained by HEI faculty. Dr. Tapang earlier mentioned about their program on training masters and PhD students. So this slide shows the total number of HEI faculty with PhD. So we just have around 22,000 all over the Philippines. That's around 16% or 16.6%. And for MS with MS or MA, 37%, and faculty members with BS and BS degrees only have we have 46%. So I think in advanced countries, most or all of the faculty members are graduates of PhD, or they even have 1 or 2 postdoc fellowships they finished related to their programs or their expertise. For the student faculty ratio, we have 1.22 in HEIs and 1.25 in SUCs. So let's move on to the status of STEM tertiary education in the Philippines. I looked up in Google and tried to find some papers. Actually, found around 5 to 10 papers. But let me just show this data from the WEF, or World Economic Forum, last 2016. They said that the quality of mathematics and science education in the Philippines ranks among the lowest regionally. This could mean the ASEAN or the Asia Pacific. So we have very low STEM graduates, around just 13%. Compared with China, I got this in Industry Week website. They said that in China, the STEM graduates are at least 40%, and I think in the US, it's around 20% of their graduates. Most graduates in the Philippines, most STEM graduates, prefer working in Manila and probably Cebu and Davao and Baguio, the metropolitan areas. And then 25% Calabarzon and 7% in Central Luzon. So this leaves around just 30% going back or staying in the countryside, in the other 13 or 14 regions in the Philippines. So here are some DOST programs that support STEM education. I actually asked some friends to provide me some friends in the OST to provide me some information regarding their programs, especially the scholarship programs. But first, let me show you this slide. It's an interview with DOST Secretary de la Peña. He said that around 1,250 freshmen BS degree scholars were granted in 2010, but now it is around 10,000 freshmen. And then in 2008, there were only 17 MS and PhD graduates. And in the past 4 years, because of their aggressive recruitment and the granting of scholarships, they are able to produce 400 to 500 MS and PhD graduates in the past 4 years. And also, he said that DOST heavily invests in science and technology facilities all over the country. In 2016, he said that 80% of the funding went to NCR, Central Luzon, and Calabarzon, the 3 I mentioned with the highest number of enrollees or students. And but in 2020, it was reversed, or 27% went to the 3 regions, and around 73% of funding went to the other 13 or 14 regions in the Philippines. The funding to other regions has increased, and also the capacity to do research also increased. Right now, we have around 7.2 billion for R&D budget for DOST. So to get into details of the scholarships, the DOST Science Education Institute provide undergraduate scholarships to over 20,000 students. In 2020, they have 28,900. And some other programs, for example, AST HRDP, and then for science and math education, they have 1,320. And for ERDT, this is for master's and PhD students, they have granted 1,383 scholarships to these students in the ERDT partner institutions like Mapua, De La Salle, UP, MSUIIT, and I think CLSU is also included there. So these are the historical number of increase of scholarships granted by DOST SEI. Now, another arm of DOST is the Human Resource and Infrastructure Development Department or Division. They have this program they call the YIP or YIP, Young Innovators Program. They provide funding to high school and college students to do their research. I think it's also part of their thesis or project studies for graduation. Also, we have the HRDP. I availed of this program when I went to Case Western with Professor Advincula on 3D printing training. They also have the Balik Scientist program. Now these Balik Scientists help enhance the scientific research culture in the different institutions that they visit. And and also the IDP program. The IDP program of the UST funds 5 million, at least around 5 million pesos to institutions to establish their laboratories. I availed also of this program, and we have the first 3D printing research laboratory in the country. The OST also provides support to researchers in conducting their research activities. They grant funding for the use of some equipment. Now, barriers to one paper by Edgy Wale. He said that barriers to STEM education needs to be addressed and should start by fixing the problems at the basic and secondary levels, which are the grassroots and potential feeders to colleges and universities. Dr. Tapang mentioned that probably state universities or universities in the regions are their potential feeders for the masters and PhDs. But in our case, in the regions, our potential feeders are the secondary, the senior high schools all over the province or in the community that we belong to. So secondary education and the STEM program for these secondary educations is also very important to prepare them to enter college in STEM-related disciplines or degrees. Okay, the Philippine Science High School Executive Director Dr. Habacon promotes the engineering design process because she said it promotes critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication, which are the 21st century learning skills, as we all know. And they also provided last 2017 scholarships to 7,800 students, 882 students in all campuses in the regions in the Philippines. So here are some challenges of STEM education in high schools, and Dr. Christopher and Victoria Bernido, Ramon Magsaysay awardees in 2010, they mentioned the lack of qualified and mature STEM teachers. There is a brain drain because of better pay and overall quality of life in other countries. We lack classrooms and lab facilities. We have insufficient and relevant I'm sorry, insufficient relevant and interesting jobs after graduating from these STEM degrees. More so, if you have MS and PhDs, usually you just go to teaching in other colleges or state universities also after obtaining or having your degrees. I checked this paper, The Barriers to Successful Implementation of STEM Education. I think this was published in the US, but we can also get some ideas and probably reflect on their challenges, which are also common challenges that we have here in the Philippines. So we have a limited supply of qualified faculty. As you can see in the number of PhDs and the masters, just around 50% of the total faculty in higher education institutions. We have to invest, there is lack of investment in the professional development of faculty. Preparation, inspiration of students. Yeah, when in other countries, in advanced countries, they have this tour before entering college. So students would be able uh, to imagine what they'll be doing in college and getting inspiration from the professors that will be interacting with during their brief or 1 or 2 day tour of the campus, especially in Case Western and in my university in South Korea. They do those kinds of university promotion tours. Connection with the individual learners in wide variety of ways. So some students or many students just think of passing the subjects or the courses that they enroll in, not really focusing on what they will be, what knowledge they will learn or skills that they will acquire. Support from university, probably some are lacking. Some universities doesn't have enough support system for these STEM programs. There's lack of research collaboration across STEM fields. In many cases, faculty or the colleges or the schools, they take each of this STEM individually and not not a collaboration of all of these fields. Content preparation, content delivery and method assessment, lab facilities, and also hands-on training for students. So for this one, we need equipment. We need experts for these students to have a very meaningful experience. So what are some of the strategies being implemented in Philippine Science High School? So the director said they try to make the learning process fun, interesting, and engaging, encourage students to explore, experiment, and conduct lab exercises. So participation in internship programs in local and international institutions, exposure to different lab equipment, opportunity to listen to lectures and observe actual scientific experiments. Also, Dr. Bernido said that they use a learning program which bypasses the lack of qualified teachers. So they have this, I forgot the program they have, but they have this institutionalized in their high school, in their institution, and also in other institutions as well. Effectively and efficiently implement a strong STEM curriculum. So revision and enhancement of curriculum is very important. So from literature, these are, let me quickly go through this. Some strategies: promote integrated STEM education for students using scientific inquiry, technology use, engineering design, and mathematical thinking. Support for teachers: develop teachers' positive attitude toward art appreciation. Encourage knowledge-building pedagogies and develop more partnerships with local and international institutions. So what needs to be done? Here are some of my personal thoughts, in addition to those shared by Dr. Tapang earlier. So the government needs to invest more on STEM education, scholarships, trainings, and resources. I was looking in the funding of Case Western and MIT in the US last night, and I was surprised that the funding they have for research, I think for Case, they have around 15 billion pesos last year. For MIT, they have, I think, around 35 to 40 billion pesos, compared with the whole program that we have in research and development in the Philippines. Ours is the investment of the Philippine government is relatively smaller with those individual institutions. So we have to invest more on laboratory facilities. I we appreciate the investments done in BPSU, and also they are trying to add more facilities. But I think the OST should request more funding to put up similar facilities all over the country. As Dr. Tapang said, we have to have more scholarships for future scientists and professors. Encourage businesses to establish in the regions where scientists can work or apply their expertise. So I heard last 3-4 months ago they have this Balik Provincia program. Also, we need to have government long-term program for technology-based businesses. This could be established businesses, and the second one could be on the tech startups. We have RA 337, which is the Innovative Startup Act. I remember when I was in South Korea last year 2003, they had this 10-year program for different industries like the smartphone, the automotive industry project. They have a project in superconductivity. They have a project in semiconductors, and look at them right now. Their investments paid off, and we have the Samsung, the Galaxy series. We have the new automobiles from Hyundai and Kia, and other products in the electronics industry. So let me continue. We should, as Dr. Tapang mentioned a while ago, the government should create more plantilla positions for scientists or faculty scientists to work and teach in the SUCs. Implement uniform policies, guidelines for faculty deloading for science research across all SUCs, and should be strictly enforced. The Magna Carta, if possible, should include SUCs or those teaching in universities, or probably craft or create a new policies that would address this problem with faculty deloading and the benefits of faculty researchers. Establish more STEM-related graduate programs. I think in SUCs there are a lot of management and education-related graduate programs. Maybe the OST CHED and the DBM should try to increase this STEM-related graduate programs. For example, biology, chemistry, physics, and all the engineering programs in all the regions in the Philippines. Encourage hiring of student research assistants in STEM-related research projects. Encourage more STEM education-related researchers, including theses and dissertations. So these are just issues from the classroom, and also include the macroscopic, the national policy, calling for collective effort from all stakeholders. So these are some of the publications I read on STEM education. I'd like to acknowledge the PAASE and Professor Advincula and Professor Purganan, and also DOST SEI and DOST HRDD for the information that they shared. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Dizon Kokoy, for that enlightening and essentially comprehensive view of things, especially with the SUCs. And of course, before we take any questions, let me note some of the observations here. Really, it's almost a chicken and egg problem. And where do we start? Complex place in terms of what the government can do, what the needs are for each university, and the priority from secondary education all the way to tertiary education. And I know we have a number of experiences from the other speakers as well, including Mike can give some input. But for me, for example, in my own way, and each of us can share, the task really can start from any entry point. And I believe really in providing opportunities for research, just as Dean Tapang said, the need to have facilities, to have funding for scholars is there to move the needle. On the other hand, what Professor Dizon is emphasizing as well is to distribute this opportunity regionally, but also even start from more high schools. So with that, let me open the floor for questions. Let me first read one question, and I would ask the speakers or anyone to try to limit your comments in 2 minutes or less to give opportunity for more questions and participants. So there's one question from Raymond Tan. Okay, this is specifically for Dr. Tapa. How viable is it to lobby for more subsidy, free tuition for grad students on the principle that more benefits accrue to the general public from graduate R&D programs?
Yeah, we have been talking to several lawmakers already with regard to graduate student free graduate tuition for 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 our students. But as you saw in my presentation earlier, tuition is really a very small part of producing that PhD student, and unless you couple this together with research funding, free tuition would just not cut it. It's not the tuition that really uh, uh, is the burden. It's really sustaining the research field that graduate student is entering. Of course, there is the ASTHRDP, which Professor Dizon has pointed out earlier, but the mechanisms of ARDP and ASTHRDP um, is quite slow and not really that responsive to the needs of fast-paced research. There are I managed the whole project for the ASTHRDP for the whole of UP Diliman, and even if we finish in 2 weeks, the paperwork will be stuck at the DOST for months. Um, and if somebody wants to go to a conference, they would have to get their reimbursement 6 months after their conference, unless they have cash, uh, which not everybody would have. Not every professor would have extra money to give their student and just hope that it gets reimbursed in time. So that's the problem. One way really is to fast track ASTHRDP, and one of their um, bottlenecks is that they have to have more staff doing this. They're managing it like a normal um, scholarship program. It should not be like that. It should be something that is managed to make things fast for our scholars, so that more of those 35,000 students will be replicated and getting their accelerated degrees in science and technology and engineering.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, no, thank you. Seems like some of the issues, of course, are uh, getting past the usual way of doing things in terms of bureaucracy and fast tracking things. So I appreciate that. Other questions from the
Can I
audience? If you feel it's better for me, I can read any questions you share by chat.
can I ask a question, Gobet?
Yes, Mike.
Yeah, this is Michael, and this is for both Dean Tapang and Professor Dizon. Oh, by the way, Professor Dizon, that's my middle name is Dizon too, so we must be related. So I was just wondering because one of the things that Professor Dizon has pointed out is the fact that these STEM graduates who come out sometimes that they don't get interesting relevant job prospects. To what and for example here at NYU and New York University and others, we're very aggressive at trying to get our students to do internships, in industry, in government agencies, wherever, as part of their experience in education, and hopefully that translates into jobs later on. Uh, are there similar initiatives? What's the landscape for that in the Philippines? I suspect that it might be a little bit weak, but I just wanted to hear your views on those for both of you.
John?
Okay, let me quickly answer. Yeah, for example, for engineering graduates, engineering degree graduates, our students, some of them or many of them work as as technicians, not as design engineers. So that's one good example. So you study very difficult engineering subjects, numerical subjects, and but when you go to work, you just do non non highly technical non highly technical job or work. You just do some supervision of some that could be probably could be done by non-engineering graduates. That's
Mm-hmm.
one. And also um, in Bataan we have many industries, so getting a getting a job after graduation is probably easier compared with other or in other provinces. So I I think the graduates of the past uh, one or two batches, they're having difficulty right now to find jobs in the in our province. How much more in other provinces? That's that they don't have that don't have industries in their community or nearby.
Mm-hmm. So keyword there, Coco, is underemployment and also mismatch. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one. Yeah, that's one.
Yeah.
Yeah, underemployment mismatch.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There are programs in the College of Science that actually have strong internship programs like chemistry. The Institute of Mathematics would have very strong ties with industry, and most of their graduates, even at graduate school level, um, would be very welcomed by these companies. On the other hand, of course, there's limited employment for MBB, for physics. Um, Geology would have also mining companies, but if there's a slump in the mining industry, then there's also a slump in their employability. Now, on the other hand, we do have we are increasing our um, pitches with the big companies here in the Metro Manila, so that they could actually not only in terms of hiring the students, but also um, working with the professors. So that's one other aspect that we are trying to develop, the industry collaboration, which has not been that strong for the past few decades in the UPs, more particularly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'd like to add to one more example is, for example, an engineering graduate would enter or finish his master's degree or PhD degree. So when they go to the industry, as you know, the Philippine companies, we don't have technology companies in the Philippines. There are multinational companies located here. They do the production and manufacturing here in SBMA, in Freeport area of Bataan, in Clark. But there are very few, or there are not. There is no real technology company in the Philippines that we produce and export our, for example, electronics or industrial equipment. So we can't. So the MS and PhD graduates, they end up working in. They could end up working in state universities. When they enter state universities or private institutions, they will get paid with a salary for an instructor one. The salary for instructor one is 25,000 pesos. So you study very hard, earning your MS and PhDs, and after 7 years studying, you just get paid with instructor one level and get promoted after 5 or 10 years. That's the
Mm-hmm.
situation in the SUCs.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and of course, more questions can come, and I can read them. But one thing I can PAASE, there's a lot of STEM graduates are probably entering the call center, service BPO jobs. But of course, we know even though they're paying, they do not match what they've been trained for. So let me put it in this light or perspective. What do you see would the need be for startup companies, for micro enterprises to, or even big enterprises to start hiring at least a master's degree person? Um, who's a graduate from UP or from BPSU.
Yeah, I think the important thing for these companies is the bottom line, the the their operational expenses and profit. So if they hire probably MS or PhD degrees holders, I think they will not be able to afford or spend. They will not be spending money on hiring. Yeah, on there are very few uh, requiring MS or PhD degrees in yeah in companies here, especially in my area, in my community.
Mm-hmm. So
I don't know
demand is
in
very
Manila.
important. Yeah. Go ahead, Ditapan.
Maybe the more important thing is to present the MS graduate not just expert in a certain field, but somebody who could deal with the problems that would come around in a small company that could solve it analytically in a more generalistic way.
Yeah,
Instead of say, I'm a physicist, I don't know about business, etc.
Yeah.
But I could analyze things. I could do things um, for the company, and maybe that's the thing that we have to put into the students so that they would also be able to sell themselves to these small companies and also to educate the companies that what they're hiring is not just an expert in one field, but somebody could deal with problems that would come along the way.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a
Can I
very good
just,
point, Dintapang.
yeah,
So really, part of it is upgrading the training to appreciate industry-related research or R&D practices, or understanding the bottom line of a company that they need to make a profit. Sometimes even technical entrepreneurship as part of the DNA to make them prepare them for the real world, and that means when they're hired, they are already equipped with some of the skills instead of retraining them again. So, Erica, did you have a question?
I have
No.
a question, Robert.
Oh, yes, Arnold.
Uh, you see, has there been any rational assessment of really the human resource demand for PhD in the Philippines rather than using the UN 3,000 per year? But do we really need 3,000 per year? I mean, has there been really a rational assessment of the demand or the need of how many PhDs do we really need for a certain period of time, so that then the university can have a realistic target as to how many PhDs they're going to make or to produce? Because, I mean, for example, in Germany, they do have that. There's a feedback. Industry tells them how many PhDs they need in the next 4 years. So there's a feedback loop from industry as to how many PhDs they need. And there's a continuing assessment, reassessment of how many are going to be produced in certain disciplines. And so, has there been a rational assessment rather than using a sort of a UN 3,000 per year, but really, I mean, can the economy absorb it?
Yeah.
That's a good point, Arnold. Could there be a algorithm even to predict, how this trend will happen and real numbers? Yeah, that's a good point. Anyone can answer, probably Dean Tapang.
The last the last DOST um, study on regional demand for SNT, not necessarily PhDs, but for SNT demand, they started with by looking at the the industries in the regions and what is necessary to sustain those industries. But that was done, I think, 2007.
Okay.
And it has to be done again. It has to be upgraded. I see Chris uh, volunteering some numbers. Chris?
Hello, good morning, everyone. Yeah, I think in 2015 studies, actually, this is not even for PhD and MS. In nationwide, STEM graduates specifically, there is just one proper jobs for every 6 graduates and one proper jobs in Metro Manila for every 25 graduates. So one of the most important reason why we cannot, why scientists, STEM graduates in general, cannot argue for a higher salary is because that is the truth actually. The demand is not there, more so for MS and PhD. So the point of Arnold is very, very critical, very critical. So I guess one of the my personal opinion is one of the thing that is lacking in STEM graduates, which is present in many other graduates, is that they know how to anchor their value to the need of the company, so that they should not be they should not be priced per hour as a function of time, but they should be anchored on what are the values that they can add to their company. And that is why one of the hopefully one of the initiative that will happen to the universities now, especially for the STEAM grads and more so for those with an MS and PhD, is to include entrepreneurship courses and entrepreneurship ideas, because I guess that is the one that will definitely put additional value to the STEM grads. Thank you.
So
If
Yeah,
I may
thank
add,
you,
yeah.
Chris. Yes, yes, Linda.
just to add, we actually are piloting right now a technopreneurship course that um, hopefully would be taken as an elective at the moment because it would need some curricular changes to be. But it's being piloted by the Institute of Biology, and most of the
Yep.
graduates already have been taking it. And we plan to have it this semester. Um,
Mhm.
well, hopefully it would be something that students will be taking because it could be easily retrofitted for a work from home setup, and hopefully for next sem we'll see if how it will be taken up by our students.
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Dean.
So
I think
Okay, Professor.
the engineering of UP Los Baños will also do the same thing, which is I think a very positive development.
Yeah. We can take one more question or one more
Yeah,
comment before we
Sir
go to
Sir
the
Gobet,
next.
if I may add,
Yeah.
for to answer Professor Guloy's inquiry, I think if someone would conduct a study, they can start with the 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 HEIs, which have the demand for MS or PhD graduates. For example, I said we have a million enrollees for STEM, and then you use the average number of students like 20, and then right now we have I think around 40% of faculty with MS and PhD, so that would leave around 60% of those total uh, uh, number of needed faculty members, which we will now have to uh, which they now have to undergo MS or PhD training. So that would be a good number to start with from HEIs, because as Professor Monterola said, there's no real demand from the industry right now for these graduate degree holders.
Yeah. No, thank you, Professor Dizo, and thank you all. I'd like to give the last word to Mike Burungana, and then he'll transition to hosting the other
well,
speakers.
there really was no last word, but thank you for the two previous speakers. I personally learned quite a bit from both your presentations. I wish we had another hour to discuss because there's a lot of things to unpack here, and maybe one day we can discuss it face to face. But let's go on to the second half of today's general discussion from PAASE. And we're the first one in the second half is Dr. Erica Legara. I first met Erica when she was still at A-Star in Singapore. I was there for a Council of Scientists meeting for the Human Frontier Science program, and we bumped into each other. And since she got her PhD, as all of you know, her undergraduate and PhD in physics at the University of the Philippines in Diliman. Then went to A-Star to work, and then was subsequently recruited back to the Philippines, to the Asian Institute of Management. And one of the reasons I wanted her to be on this program is because when she came back to AIM, she and with the help of Chris Monterola, established the Data Science Master's program there. And it quickly became one of the best data science programs, not only in the country, but in the region. And I thought it was a great case study of how to establish and sustain excellence in a major science initiative in quite a short period of time. And I'm hoping that she can tell us some of her experiences with that program. So with that, Erica, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you for the very generous introduction. Hopefully this presentation will add a new layer in the discussion. So yeah, Michael was actually the one who gave the title, Establishing and Sustaining Excellence, the AIM's Data Science Experience. I am from the Aboitiz School of Innovation, Technology, and Entrepreneurship of AIM. Actually, yeah, like what Prof. Gani said earlier, we belonged in the same laboratory when I was still at the National Institute of Physics. We are both in the field of complex systems. And yeah, it's good to see him here today. So just to put something in context, when we talk about STEM and the industry, one important number that I always present to many of our stakeholders is artificial intelligence. And in 2018, the MIT did an interview to over 3,000 executives all over the world, the C-level executives, and they asked about what are their expectations for AI. And 91% of these 3,000 executives say that, we believe that AI will have a huge impact on our processes and also on our products. Just the year before that, this was just at 76%. So imagine the interest of the industry in the field of technology and AI in particular. And most of the innovations that are being done in the past maybe 3-5 years are actually in the field of AI, right? So for organizations, even the local industries, if they want to remain competitive, not only in the Philippines, but also in the ASEAN region or even globally, they really have to invest in technology. And that's where STEM would be coming in. So as you can see here in 2018, around 71.8% is invested in AI in terms of the tech investments, right? So, and McKinsey estimates that AI by 2030 will have a value creation of around $13 trillion. So I'm presenting this because this is maybe somewhere we can all get into, because there's a demand, a real demand here. And many of the organizations are now saying that data science and artificial intelligence is not just an academic field anymore. It's now a strategic capability for many of the companies. So like what Michael said, we were in Singapore for around, Chris and I, for around 5-6 years. And when we came back in 2017, there was actually a lot of industries that contacted us and wanted to explore what data science is. And what we noticed was that the industry here in the Philippines can be classified under 5 clusters, maybe just, and a combination of them. Many of our organizations lack the understanding of how technology, science can actually help them, right? And there are those who believe that science can actually help them, but there's no internal support, meaning there's not much impactful champions to push for STEM in the organizations, in these private companies. And then there's the lack of resources. They don't have enough money to build their own AI or analytics capabilities in-house. And the data strategy is also important. They don't have that yet anyway, because this is about changing the culture, from something that uses gut feel or intuition to something that uses data, science, and technology in making their decisions. And of course, this is also where we can all come in, the lack of data science talents in the country and in the region. So there are big organizations, the conglomerates, that know how analytics, how data, how STEM can actually impact their organizations. However, they find it difficult to find the right talent. Note that these are not just those with MS or PhD degrees. Like what Prof. Chris and Prof. Gani alluded to earlier, and I think Gobet as well, it's important that our graduates, our STEM graduates, understand the language of business. So when we came back to AIM to design the very first data science program in the Philippines and also one of the first in the region, we had these three things in mind, the anchoring. So this came first before we designed the program. Three things: the industry, we have to think about them as a stakeholder, because if the industry doesn't have any buy-in, then where will our graduates go, right? So we have to emphasize to the industry that the program can help them innovate and also remain competitive in the field of analytics. So the program was designed to be of service to the industry and also to provide them with the manpower. These are our graduates. And we also want to impact society at the same time. And this is where we work closely with the government, and hopefully the program can, have a ripple effect to have a more data-driven culture in the Philippines. And of course, we don't forget that we are still part of an academic institution. So on top of having to work with the industry on corporate projects, R&D projects, we also still have to generate novel knowledge. So meaning we have to have publications. So this was the idea. And what Chris and I noticed was that they are not actually opposing mechanisms, and we can gravitate them towards each other if we talk about data, right? So all of them use data. Okay, so before I proceed, I just want to introduce our school. So I'm from the Aboitiz School of Innovation, Tech, and Entrepreneurship. This is actually headed by Chris. He's actually here. However, I will focus on MSDS program as is requested by this session, and also Access Lab, which is very crucial in our R&D journey in the last 3 years. So first, the MS in Data Science program of AIM takes in around 60 to 70 full-time MS in Data Science students per year. Okay, we get around 100 to 150 applicants, in fact, but we take in only 60 to 70 because that's the capacity, and we want to maintain the quality of education. And this is also where we house the professors in data science. That includes myself, Chris Montarola, Christian Alice, and some of our colleagues. One of the innovations, I believe, of AIM is this Analytics, Computing, and Complex Systems Laboratory. Why? Because it hires full-time research scientists and research engineers who do not have to teach, who do not have to check papers. So their only role really is to produce research and to help our graduate students produce research. Access also houses the fastest AI supercomputer in the country, donated by Acer, Mr. Stanchi of Acer. And these are the specific roles of Access. Number one, again, they don't have to teach. They just need to engage private and public organizations in R&D. Somehow, you can think of them as a consulting arm in R&D of AIM. They have to publish academic papers, the scientists there, and also they have to engage the students of the graduate program MSDS. So we collaborate very closely with the industry, the government, and also international organizations through these two programs. And there are two ways we engage them, two general ways. The first engagement in R&D is through Access Lab directly. What happens is that these organizations provide us with their research question. These are projects that R&D projects wherein you don't have exact solutions. This is your typical R&D project. And then the other one, the second engagement, is through our MSDS program, wherein our data science students act as consultants. Of course, since they are still new in the field of R&D, we have the Access Lab scientists as mentors. Okay, so I'm just gonna focus on the second type, this one here, wherein we have the MSDS program. This is through our capstone projects or the theses of our students. So what happens? AIM gives a call, okay? It gives a call for use cases from industry, government, and international organizations. So they provide the research questions that students have to answer. Of course, we have to make sure, the professors, us, have to make sure that the use cases are of quality, something that MS students should be able to solve within 3 to 4 months, because the program is only for 15 months. And we also have to make sure that it is difficult enough, it is quality enough, so that we can really say that it is MS research level, right? Once the use cases are reviewed, we then present the use cases to our students, all the MS students, the entire class, and then each student will now form a team, and they will decide which problems they would want to solve, and they will write a proposal. So in this process, we're actually training our graduate students not just to solve the problem, but to actually write a research proposal to be submitted to the business and also the professors. So it has to have a good combination of tech and biz so that it can be reviewed. And of course, the organization will review the proposal, just like any funding institutions. And once the problem is awarded, the team would now team up with AIM profs, the mentors, and also co-mentors, the Access Lab. So with this kind of setup, we're able to really get lots of industry problems and engage industry and international organizations in the program. So they also get to appreciate STEM at the same time. These are just some of the projects that we're actually working on, and we do make sure that there's some level of novelty in these projects, because at the end of the day, this is still an MS degree. Just some numbers for the MSDS 2020, we did receive 28 use cases from the industry. So there is a demand. There's a demand for the capability to solve actual industry problems. Of the 28, we were able to filter 22. Okay, filter meaning they are Masters of Science in Data Science material. And of the 22, 15 were chosen as actual capstone projects of the students. So all in all, in just 1 year, we were able to engage 13 stakeholders on actual R&D projects. AIM was able to generate 6 million pesos. It's really just small because we really just want to help our industry appreciate R&D and research. However, look at this value here. This value is actually calculated by our collaborators, not by us. And they're saying that overall, all of these organizations were able to generate around 40 million US dollar potential revenue because of their engagement with us. Our students built prescriptive analytics, data decision support platforms for them to make them strategize in a more intelligent way to impact their processes, to also impact their products. And these are just some of the organizations that we've worked closely with in the last 3 years. Some of the companies are not willing to share their information, so these are just some of them. And maybe very quickly, I'm just gonna share what kinds of problems that we solve here. It's very applied, but then at the same time, there's also a lot of theoretical information out there. So the first one is helping Manila Water Company predict the level of Angat Dam, water level. They can do this. They were able to do this before. However, it would take them 2 weeks, only 2 weeks into the future to make the prediction. Of course, if you only have 2 weeks, that's not actionable. So what we did was we built a deep learning model that would allow them to make the forecast 6 months into the future, making it much more actionable. And the CIO himself that time said that, among others, this platform helped them bag the CIO award. Okay, this is done by our students together with another big conglomerate here in the country, smart farm industry, using AI to predict regional demand and improve sales forecast. And according to the stakeholders, they were able to reduce costs by around 100 million pesos. This thesis of our students. And this project is with the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. They provided us with a use case. They in fact sponsored some of their employees. And here, the idea, this was under the mentorship of Chris, was to build an AI algorithm to automate detection of pattern breaking phenomenon. Because the BSP is actually a regulator. They look through around, if I'm not mistaken, 500 financial institutions. They regulate them. They look for certain pattern breaking phenomenon. And each account they spend 40 man hours just to look through them. Okay, and they have to do this every quarter. So what we did was our students built an AI model, and they were able to decrease the 20,000 man hours into 11 minutes. And the stakeholders were really shocked. They were so happy. They attended the defense, and then they said, this is something that we should have gotten 10 years ago. So this is really wonderful because our students got to experience how AI could impact or analytics could impact organizations. But then at the same time, the organizations get to appreciate what STEM can actually do for their organization. So at the end of the day, our students will have a job-ready project portfolio. And this is where the question and the demand comes in. So this is just some of our graduates in 2019, and look at the different jobs that await them. So many say that, oh, maybe data scientists are too expensive. Maybe they will not get hired locally. Actually, that's not very true at all. If the organization appreciates the importance, the value of that person, they're willing to spend actually, as long as that business value is properly articulated. So these are just some of the positions of our graduates. And I think this is what Michael was talking about earlier. We were very happy because in 2018 and 2019, we were ranked top 3 across Far East Asia in terms of data analytics by ED Universal Best Ranking of Masters. So something that we're truly proud of. I'm almost done. And this is also something that we're very, very happy about. We also won 2 prestigious International Innovation Awards. One from the AACSB, which is for the business school accreditation. We won the innovations that inspire because of the Access Lab, wherein we house full-time data scientists and engineers. And we also won these like Oscars for education from Times Higher Education, the top prize for technological innovation of the year in 2019. So again, this is also because of Access Lab that really supports the MSDS program. And before I end, I want to show that you don't really have to choose between industry project or publication. Because in our experience, when you work with R&D, real world problems, you really do come up with novel ideas that you can publish. So in fact, we are hitting lots of birds with one stone. So again, this is my last slide. I just have to go back here. I think we have an advantage because we can design our curriculum and we can make changes whenever it's needed. So we listen closely to what industry is saying because of our exposure with them. And also the government, society, and also the academic and the scientific community. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for this invitation to speak. Thank you, Michael and Gobet and PAASE.
Thank you very much, Erica. That was very inspirational. As I hope the audience understands why I was a big fan of Professor Legata and Professor Monterola. This program is 3 years old. I believe it's 3 years old, right, Erica?
Correct.
It's 3 years old. They're already one of the top in the region. And you can see how valuable it's become in such a short period of time, which actually shows us that you can do innovation in STEM education and R&D training very quickly if you have the leadership and vision to do that. So we're gonna take some questions later on, Erica, and we're gonna go into a discussion. We'll go next to Arnold Guloy, who I've known since high school, Mineral Science High School. He also went to UP Diliman in chemistry. We were the same batch. And then went on to get his PhD at Iowa State University. And actually, I want to say that Arnold was one of the first of the wave of students who went from UP Diliman to take training abroad in science. In this case, in chemistry. And there was several of us who followed in his footsteps. So he was really the pioneer in that one. He then did a postdoc at IBM Watson Center, and then went on to become a faculty member with a strong program in crystalline solids at University of Houston. And he's also been involved especially in doing R&D training exchanges, and also recruiting students from the Philippines into the United States graduate programs. So Arnold will tell us a little bit maybe about his experience though. So Arnold, floor is yours.
Okay, let me just share my. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, so I'd like to talk about my personal, and basically this is going to be a personal experience report, and sort of what went through in trying to establish international linkages with the Philippines in particular. But we've been involved, or I've been involved in many international programs, establishing international programs with China, with Korea, Germany, Sweden, including Finland. So these are the things, the barriers, and the hurdles that we had to go through in going through these problems. So let me just start by saying that that international collaboration has been recognized, even by the NSF, that it is important for graduate education, particularly now that basically no country can claim monopoly in the cutting edge of science. So even in my field, you have France, Germany, US, Japan, and now even China leading the research and the building of knowledge and educating the future scientists. So those are things that have to be incorporated in understanding or trying to provide value to an international collaboration. One very interesting quote, actually, that I saw by Lin and Salzman way back in 2006 is that developing a collaborative advantage rather than a competitive advantage is sort of critical for the United States to remain an innovation center. So that's sort of what we've been using to justify linkages with leading universities, leading research institutions in the different countries. One of the things that came about also is there's a report by the Royal Society wherein they basically laid out the reasons for international collaboration, that it enhances the quality of scientific research and improves the efficacy and efficiency of that research. Now, it's very important also that the rise in this is correlated to publication. So way back in 1988, only 8% of the world's science and engineering articles had international co-authors. When I say international co-authors, the institutions are different countries, okay? And then in 2007, that increased to 22%. And in the last report by the Royal Society in 2011, that has went up to 35%. In fact, in the 2015 Science Indicator report by the NSF, that is now up to 42%. So there is really an increasing demand for international collaboration, and it's being very successful. Okay? On the other hand, at the same time, the internalization or internationalization of higher education has become, very important, but it has become more complicated. Okay? Mainly because now you're trying to bring in two different cultures, two different systems of education, and trying to come up with a common recognized degree, common recognized training. So one of the things is that in the last 10 years, support for international experiences for graduate students has become very important. In fact, this was basically emphasized by the United States National Science Foundation. They created this PIRE, P-I-R-E, or Partnership for International Research and Education, that emphasizes the exchange of experiences for US PhD students and an international country. And also the NSF program called IGERT, okay, Innovation in Graduate Education, Research and Training, also emphasizes and encourages international experience. In Europe, okay, you have the Erasmus Mundi, as well as the Max Planck Society and the Madame Curie program that support inter-European and non-European international education and career development. These are just recent, probably in the last 10, 15 years. Yeah? And then, of course, you have also government or national departments and laboratories that are also establishing international collaborations with programs or other laboratories from other countries to work on specific problems that are funded by the national government. And in the process, it will help their students as well as postdocs develop the expertise as well as the international training that they would get in dealing with. The most important thing here, I remember when I was at IBM, was they always emphasize that you'll be working with people from different cultures, and that always enhances your appreciation for science. And this is basically what is going on. Then in the recent report by the Council of Graduate Schools, they came up with impacts and what are the important benefits of international graduate education collaboration. And for the students, this includes specific training and research opportunities, cultural perspective, and skills required for international research projects. On the other hand, as they mentioned in this report, MS degrees are still the most common degrees that are produced from an international graduate education. Then, of course, we are more familiar with the benefits for faculty. You know, you broaden your research networks, get to know the people in your field, get to be closer to the editors and international advisory boards or journals that can support you or recognize your work. And of course, that leads to access to new knowledge and skills, and in many cases, resources. For the institutions, this basically includes the broadened research capabilities, as well as the possibility to recruit talented international students, as well as faculty. And the more thing that about the administrators always tell us is that they provide a more visible and global research profile. On the other hand, there's also broader impact for the state and local communities, particularly in Houston, for example, wherein our focus is related to the research or the industry that is being done in Houston. This is energy and health. And so there are many international collaborators dealing with health, medicine, as well as energy. And so the state and local communities and the local government essentially benefit from these programs. Now, what are trends? What are the trends? There's a changing, because of this, there are now trends and changes in graduate education. One of the first major changes is the role of graduate schools and the graduate deans. Now graduate deans are directly involved. In fact, they're critically involved. They have a strategic role in establishing international academic and research programs. There's now an office basically under the graduate dean dealing mainly with international collaboration in academic programs. Also, in the US, the primary driver behind international collaborations is not revenue. It's rather academic and research. This includes, for us, for example, the more important ones are attracting good international students into our program, particularly for us. I mean, Houston, we could say a mid-level university, and so we have to, with very good faculty, so we have to extend recruiting good graduate students abroad. And then, responding to faculty interest, okay? Many of our faculty are, I'm proud to say that in the University of Houston, about 40% of our faculty are international, or they were born outside the United States. And so you have faculty going back to their home country, trying to establish links, and they would come with their own faculty interest, as well as going on to the leading research universities or institutions abroad, and they would lead to some sort of common interest in research. And of course, for the upper administration, for a dean, it means that you strengthen the academic research quality as well as the research profile. Now, other trends, I would say the increasing challenges to graduate international collaborations, the major problem that we have faced is sustainability. Okay, that means once that faculty leaves who started it or loses interest, normally it ends. Okay, and so there's this problem of sustaining it beyond the initial contact, beyond the initial MOA, okay, to produce outcomes. Okay, and that means that the faculty has to be directly involved, most and not just one. Then the other one is securing adequate funding. Okay, that means you have to assess available funding, internal as well as external. And then you need to be able to recruit good students, convince them to come to the United States, or for the United States or for the domestic students to go to a foreign country. And of course, one of the biggest problems we went through is negotiating an MOA. Forget about an MOU, it's the MOA that is critical. And then of course, finally, it's about finances. You have to have a fee structure or a support, a financial support mechanism for students for that program to be sustainable. So another one, of course, a key challenge again is which program are you going to develop? There are two general types of programs for international collaborations. Academic, in this case, you have what we call dual degrees, awarding the students a double credit for a single body of work, and the development of joint degrees. In this case, this becomes a new degree. It's essentially a new degree, and therefore accreditation and approval processes beyond the university, in many cases, becomes a key challenge. Other trends that we've seen, that changes, one of the things that we've recognized is that primary funding of sources for international collaborative degree programs come from student fees, internal university budgets, and of course, the international sources. Unfortunately, US universities receive less funding for international research collaborations from the federal government than they do from foreign sources. Now, also another problem or another challenge that arises in terms of coming up with a workable, mutually beneficial program is, in general, it's the international students who come to the United States, and the opposite direction is sort of negligible. And one of the things that we've been dealing with, this is now, we have a program in Germany, and German students come to the US, and it's very difficult to encourage domestic students to go to Germany. And so Germany, in fact, has offered more money for students to go to them. Okay. Now, on the other hand, it's the faculty travel from the United States abroad is not a problem. So that's why, in essence, in many of these MOAs and MOUs, we count faculty versus student. Okay, so in essence, the opposite direction of US to Europe or US to Asia is basically covered by the faculty travel. Now, there are some criticisms that came across, and this is recorded as well as discussed. Okay, one of the major concerns are academic freedom, particularly when we were dealing with China and in the North African countries. There's concern about academic freedom from the faculty. The other one is proprietary interest. This became a very difficult thing, mainly because We had one instance wherein a faculty objected to a collaborator. Okay, so the student did the work under the UH professor, and the idea was essentially the UH professor. And when they wrote the paper, the advisor from the foreign country demanded that he be in the paper, and that became another, okay, a sort of stinging development in terms of trying to iron out problems. Also, the other ones that have been mentioned, particularly again in North African countries that we've collaborated with, are discriminatory laws and cultural norms, for example, regarding homosexuality and religion. Okay, these are important to faculty. Also, this is a nice quote from the report, from the CGS report, wherein they describe the potential hardships of international work, and that is, for a researcher from a high-income country working in a developing world is almost always a greater hassle than doing it in your home country. For many developing countries, everything takes more time for a variety of reasons, including a lack of resources, inefficient bureaucracies, your own cultural inexperience, and so on. So we are warned, be prepared for what can feel like wasted time, and ask yourself whether you're going to be able to adapt to working in a different culture, norm, and expectations. So this essentially summarizes of what my colleagues complain about in terms of international collaborations and academic programs. Also, in reality though, in the context of shrinking budgets, particularly in the United States, the evidence on the value of international experiences in the STEM fields remain largely anecdotal. And so we are trying to work now with the Council for Graduate International Graduate Schools, the Council for Graduate Schools, to come up, that they will come up with a study as to what are the assessments of these programs. And so there's still significant questions that remain in terms of the value of international collaborations. Now having that, now let me give you the background as to what happened with the University of Houston. So one of the things that we used, or the University of Houston used, was the United States-China exchange. Historically, China, now China is a powerful science power in the world, and largely because it took advantage of the United States graduate programs. Okay, so this I learned from the former president of Beijing University, who was a good friend, Jian Hualin. He explained to me what was the plan. Okay, and in fact, this is summarized in a study that I listed down there, written by Professor Wang, okay, in 1999. And the main point, or the person who was really in charge, or the point man, or he really grabbed the grand design for the US-China exchange, was Chung-Dao Lee, the 1957 Nobel Prize winner in physics. So what are the essential elements of this US-China exchange that we can learn from? Okay, so the first thing is the US-based Chinese-American scientists, led by Chung-Dao Lee, facilitated the admission of Chinese students into selected American graduate programs. Okay, so they organized themselves and searched and negotiated with American graduate programs to accept Chinese students as graduate students. And to compensate for a sort of an admissions process, Chung-Dao Lee and the Chinese physics community, later included chemistry and biology and engineering, came up with what they call the China-US Physics Examination and Application. Okay? And this basically became the filter for the admissions of Chinese students into the US graduate programs. Okay? Later, so in lieu of the GRE and the TOEFL, the CUSPEA became the norm. Okay? It became the alternative to graduate school admission procedures, aside from, of course, the recommendations from the Chinese American scientists. Now, because of this, the top 100 applicants in the exam were automatically admitted into the different graduate programs in the US. And they were placed by the group of Chinese American scientists. Okay? And the student funding became the very important effect. Remember, I mentioned to you the problem about international programs is sustainability. And what the Chinese American scientists did was they knew how graduate school, okay, basically funded STEM, and that is through graduate assistantships. And so all the Chinese students came to the United States as regular US graduate students, okay, with graduate assistantships, and of course, including tuition. There were no Chinese government funds in supporting them. And the Chinese government funds were used for postdocs. Okay. So these are, and later on, the Vietnamese followed the Chinese model. Okay. This is called the Vietnam National Education Foundation program, with some tweaks, of course. And between 2000 and 2015, the VEF produced over 600 PhDs and MS degrees in STEM. And this was funded by the US government through the US universities in terms of graduate fellowships. Okay. So let me now give you a background or the history of our UHUP chemistry graduate program. And there are two people that made this work, okay, that pushed us to complete it over 10 years. And this is John Baer, our former dean, and Jerry Cao, the former chancellor of UP De La Motte. They basically came up together and pushed both sides to have this completed. So initial contacts, I said, way back in 1997. And one of the things that I was told was it has to involve the whole university. It has to be comprehensive, okay? And so I tried to involve as many faculty as possible, okay? And we started admitting Filipino applicants under special consideration. That means no GREs, okay? The GREs were waived. And the Filipino students, I encouraged them to explore a wide range of research topics in chemistry, not necessarily in my field. In fact, I pushed them to organic chemistry, to biochemistry, to polymer chemistry, so that then you have a variety of skills in chemistry. Of course, one of the things is we had to overcome institutional barriers on both sides, the University of the Philippines and the University of Houston. One of the major deficiencies, of course, was the 10-year deficiency rule. And so for a while, we had to require an MS degree, but this is not important anymore that we've accommodated it. So finally, in 2007, we had an MOU and an MOA, and we've been renewing these programs since. Now, let me just give you a program in terms of the UH Department of Chemistry. We are one of the 6 academic departments in the natural sciences and mathematics. We have 34 tenure track faculty. We have 180 to 185 graduate students and about 40 to 45 postdoc associates in the department. We have a very large undergraduate majors program, over 350 BS chemistry degrees. These are all the ACS certified BS degrees in chemistry. We also have 2 special multidisciplinary programs, one with the Department of Physics and the other one with the Department of Biology and Biochemistry. These are our focus research strengths: materials chemistry and polymer chemistry, synthetic solid state inorganic chemistry, organic chemistry, synthetic methods and drug discovery, as well as theoretical chemistry related to materials and biological systems. As I said, we are focused on health and energy. So what are the graduate programs that you can consider? One is what we call the dual degrees. Okay, this results in 2 degrees from one from each institution. The internal, for us, we have some credits overlap, and that means that the total units are reduced within pre-approved guidelines, depending on the MOA degrees. And one of the things that we have to do is the degrees must already exist. Okay, and that means if the degrees are already existing, approval is just internal, and that is easy, okay? And so we only require that at least 50% of the requirements are met by each university, okay? And we do that through transfer of work. And these are all have to be mandated or written with a partner university in terms of their MOU, MOA. Actually, this should be an MOA. And we prefer this. Over time, we found that this is the preferred route. Of course, there's another one we call the joint degree. In this case, you usually have a single degree, okay? Usually we do that with 2 majors, okay? And so this becomes essentially a new degree. That means you have a full internal and State Department approval beyond the university. And so this is very difficult. In fact, it's very difficult to complete with foreign universities. Of course, it's doable with joint programs for non-thesis masters and BS, bachelors. The other option is what we call cooperative, which you, in the Philippines, we call sandwich. We share resources with another university. We have this with University of Mainz, for example, wherein the UH students spend 1 year at Mainz for research, and the German students spend 1 year at UH for research. And then they receive only 1 degree from their home institution. Okay, so these are the MOU, MOA provisions that we did. We waived the GRE, we waived the 10-year deficiency, which is not any more important, okay? Funding, the graduate tuition fellowships is for 5.5 years. That means they are funded completely for 5.5 years in terms of TA or RA. And so we have 3 regular tracks. We have 3 tracks for our Filipino graduate students. They either go through the regular track as graduate assistantships for support. They can go through the dual PhD track. Again, they're supported by graduate assistantships, or they can go to the sandwich track, and therefore there will be no support from the University of Houston. Outcomes so far, with over 55, we have admitted 55, over 55 as regular track PhDs, 2 Filipino students admitted to the joint PhD, dual PhD, okay? And then we produced 38 PhD degrees in chemistry, 14 MS degrees, 8 PhDs in other disciplines. So we've expanded, other departments have come and used our template and applied it. So we have the same programs, similar programs in physics, math, and geosciences, as well as we have had more than 18, at least I think 21 now, 21 sandwich students in science and engineering, okay? Post-PhD, what happens to this? We have 4 PhD graduates, okay, 1 with a dual degree are now faculty at the IC, the Institute of Chemistry. We have also 1 sandwich PhD graduate student, GoBet student, who's also faculty at UP Chemistry. And we have several sandwich students in engineering who are now part of the faculty there. Now other Filipinos have gone to careers in the US. We now have 3 former UH graduates who are now faculty at US, okay? And 1 has gone to China, and a number went to Europe, okay? So other outcomes, we have research collaborations going on between UH and UP. We submitted collaborative proposals. Example of this, of course, is the PIRE, NSF PIRE, way back into 2014. We have regular UH faculty visits in chemistry and engineering. And then you have UH-UP collaborations for our former graduates, okay, who are now in UP. We provide them with support in terms of hosting their MS students or providing resources for their research. Okay. Also, there will be future UP visits to UH and postdoctoral support that is being provided by our college. And of course, the more important ones are networking among our UH graduates, okay, in the Philippines as well as in abroad. Okay. And we constantly follow up, okay, between their former advisors and their students, and we keep track of where they are. Okay. And so this program template has been expanded to other UH colleges, engineering in particular, College of Technology, and biology. Okay. And this program template has also been expanded by our alumni who went back to Vietnam and Thailand, and they're using the same template that we are using, okay, for their programs. Okay, so lessons learned, okay. First, develop a clear internal guideline, and this becomes very important at the department level. Then try to maintain a consistency of policies for internal and external degrees, okay? And as much as possible, use existing programs, okay? Now, as far as financial consideration, you have to be creative. And what we used assistantships as well as sponsored programs. Otherwise, you have to charge regular tuition. You can make it into an in-state. You can provide the students $1,000 and they can then pay it in-state tuition. We also use, the usual transfer credit policies to reduce the credit hours, okay, and so on. And more importantly is we let our partner institutions control their own degree. Okay. Other one is we were able to justify, and becomes very important with the accreditation. We are able to justify the dissertation for 2 degrees, which is, that took a while, okay? And one of the essential elements of this dissertation is that the student must clearly identify the unique contribution to each degree, okay? And also very important that we learn is you first pre-identify faculty members from both universities who can serve on student committees. And these faculty members have to be supportive of the overall goal of the program. Okay? And then another avenue that we came up with is the extended, and particularly from the Chinese programs, is the extended what we call accelerated master's programs to international students, wherein top undergraduate students come to the United States to work on their master's degree while they're still completing their undergraduate degree. And it shortens a master's program and it provides us with a chance to recruit good students. In closing, international programs, graduate programs are very important, okay, particularly dual degrees and sandwich programs. And we found that certificates actually is a good thing too. And they expand the collaborative work, okay, within other universities. Certificates and dual degrees will, establish or sustain the collaboration. This sustains the collaboration. What's important in collaborations is a common student who will do the job, who will do the work. And this provides, certificates and dual degrees provides that, okay? And protects the students. Overall, what we've been lucky is we have a bureaucracy in our university who is very, very flexible. Okay, they are creative in terms of within the existing policies provided by the state, okay, for dual degrees, certificates, and programs. And they make it easier to encourage and accommodate international collaborations and partnerships. That has been the key as well. Okay, thank you. Hopefully I can answer your questions.
Thank you very much there, Arnold. Thank you very much for that insight into how to build international programs, and hopefully also to think about how Filipino students can be trained in PhD programs abroad. So we're open now to questions to any of the panelists, actually. And while we're waiting for some questions, I'll start off. If Erica Ligara is there, one of the things I'd like to ask Erica, well, I'd like to ask 2 questions. Well, one, what was the secret of making your program one of the best in the region in such a short amount of time? What do you think was the one that helped there?
I think it's really the demand, Michael. The demand is there. And when we created it, the demand was very high. And at the same time, the field itself is very applied and connected to organizations. And AIM has a network of companies and organizations, and it's very easy to tap them, especially knowing that they have this need. So I believe that's where the advantage really is.
And did you have an issue? How easy was it? You said there was a high demand, so it wasn't that difficult to get industry buy-in to help support the program from the beginning?
No, Chris can help me answer this, but I did feel that there was a challenge. In fact, during the first launching, we even didn't have any track record then, Michael, but we got around 33% of our students sponsored by private organizations. So I think that tells a lot.
Right. Oh, and by the way, a note from Chris Monterola to everybody, just in case about the AIM program. In order to participate in the master's program to get, I guess, their cases looked at, each company provides $10,000 US. So it's really fun. It's basically, it's like, if you give us $10,000, we'll consider talking to you. Um, and then the other thing is he points out that 80% of their MSDS graduates are hired within 9 months of the 15 months in their program. So even before they
Right.
graduate, I guess,
Yeah.
they already have a job. I'll read one question from Kay to Arnold here. Kay wants to know, what are your main difficulties in institutional policies in delivering the joint dual degree program, and how did you overcome these? Arnold? Arnold, I think you're muted, Arnold.
You're on mute.
There were two stages. One, actually the major problem was more on the Philippine side. And that's why it took quite a while for the MOA to be approved, because of the bureaucracy in the University of the Philippines was a bit complicated. And it took Jerry Cow basically pushing it, because before Jerry became chancellor, it was really the two sides were agreeing, but there was too many hurdles in terms of bureaucracy. So that was the first one. For our part in the University of Houston, we looked at joint, and after discussions, because if you had to do a joint program, it has to go through accreditation, because you're establishing a new degree. Any joint program is going to be a new degree. And that means you have to go through the usual accreditation of the state, as well as the Association of Universities that the University of Houston is associated with. And that becomes really tedious and prolonged. And so what our international program suggested was, are they going to agree to a dual degree? And so we found that that is much more palatable in terms of the barriers involved as just tying the two. Okay, now if you have a dual degree, now it becomes the problem. One of the things that we had to overcome was courses. Okay, whether those courses matched. Okay, and so that took a while, because we had to get the instructors of those two courses and exchange syllabus, exchange knowledge as to what is covered. Okay? And in terms of what courses are going to be offered. In this case, the University of the Philippines was more flexible. Okay, and so in fact, courses in the University of the Philippines, they adjusted their syllabus and coverage and textbook to accommodate our faculty's requirement for the courses to be credited. So those are things that one has to go through when you do this dual degree program, because both requirements of the two degrees have to be satisfied. And they have to be satisfied in terms of some common courses to be able to reduce the number of credit hours. So we had to make courses, we call them the core courses. We had to make the core courses identical, at least acceptably identical.
Okay, thank you, Arnold. Are there any other questions that people have or would like to post or discuss?
Yeah, and Michael, I sent you a question coming from one of our viewers in the YouTube channel. It wasn't particularly directed to anyone in the panel, but I guess to the organization in general. Did you receive that one?
Oh, is it from the one from NAP? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So the NAP Juanilla in the YouTube panel was wondering whether PAASE and allied groups can organize a national campaign, not necessarily government funded, that targets hearts and minds, especially among parents, about the critical role of STEM human capital for entrepreneurship, high-grade engagement with business industry, something like a call to arms. I wonder if people has any comment on that, if people, or we can kick that up, I guess, in PAASE as we go forward.
Maybe I can add.
Yeah. Chris, go ahead.
Oh yes, I think at the end of the day, this is about success stories, and that is one of the things that we are trying to highlight now. So again, the school that I am part of, it is a community of entrepreneurs, innovators, and geeks, technologists. So the most important thing is we need success stories. Now our entrepreneurs are realizing the potential of being in AI, and learning science, learning new materials that are locally available so that they can produce a very competitive product. And since our entrepreneur students, they already have a revenue. In the average, they have $3 to $4 million revenue annually. That is a very good start. That showing that if technology can help them in scaling up their businesses, it will be very natural for them to appreciate STEM. And the consequence of this, since entrepreneurship, especially for the SMEs, is naturally organic, the consequence of this will be a natural spreading of these insights on how STEM can be useful for one's career and in general in making a living.
Yeah. I think nothing as they said in Downton Abbey, nothing succeeds like success. So that showing that is really a good one. And by the way, just to let people know, one of my undergraduate students in my lab at NYU, who actually is also the daughter of the vice president of the Philippines, is doing her internship with Chris at Access. So they have internships there. Any other questions or thoughts about some of the topics we were discussing?
Maybe I can I'll add a little, Michael, because the use of this collaboration extends beyond beyond the benefit from the two institutions. But again, let me add to the network that it can produce and that can spread all throughout. The graduate students that I have in when I was teaching at NIP benefited a lot, even indirectly, even if we are not part of the UH-UP collaboration, from Arnold and Arnold's network. And some, for example, we don't have much subscription. UP doesn't have much subscription during that time on journals. And to some extent, our network with Arnold helped us get all these journals that we have, and it's not just us, but all the other individuals that we are working. So I think that type of culture is very important. It's very critical.
Well, thank you for that, Chris. Good insight.
Hey, Mike, I'd like to add a little, just reinforce most of what been said. First of all, I congratulate Arnold for really leading the way, and in many ways, when I was at UH, we really did a lot of things together. So the model that Arnold has set up, and together with our dean back then, and of course at UP, is really something that can be replicated with many of our colleagues in PAASE if they're willing to partner with other institutions in the Philippines. And this is really taking advantage of what's already built in the US and then multiplying or leveraging resources that the Philippine government can do. On the other hand, I agree with Chris and Erica. Success really breeds more success. So we really need to highlight in the press, in the media, more success stories that getting into sciences, STEM discipline really pays off, not only in terms of course, financial gain, but making a difference in the society, and of course, attracting industries to invest on STEM. And after all, this goes back to answering the chicken and egg. What will we do with all our graduates if nobody will hire them? So I really congratulate Chris and Erica for such a successful program.
Thanks, Robin.
One of the questions, I wonder if Dean Tapang is still online. I do have one question that struck me when he said that essentially 4 out of 5 PhD students, essentially, well, only 1 out of 5 finished their PhDs. And I was wondering what were the barriers for the other 4?
Yeah. Well, one is actually, well, there are several, of course, but the major reason is the length of time in the program. If they do tend to have families during their um, PhD program, and that takes over. And we understand really the pressures, especially here in the Philippines, of family living and taking care of the family and looking for a more stable quote unquote job. instead of being a grad student. That's one of the major issues. Of course, the other one is the lack of a good mentor. They tend to be put in different projects, not necessarily going to um, their topic, and sometimes they end up too long in that project and never get to satisfy the minimum requirement of the graduation. It's just a paper,
Oh,
that's sad, quote unquote. But that's what we're trying to address, right?
yeah.
Um, just to add to the point of Chris and international collaboration in the Houston connection, we actually do really appreciate these types of collaborations. And the College of Science is really open right now to having more of the different models like dual degrees, um, uh, sandwich programs, etc. All of these are back and should be um, renewed not only with the previous universities, but even within the Philippines, like AIM, right, Chris and Erica? Okay.
Of course, Organic.
Yeah.
Um, I,
Yeah, I mean, and actually, this might be interesting to ask Arnold about. You know, it's hard. When I was the dean at NYU, we established several like exchange programs with other universities abroad. But it was extraordinarily difficult for us at NYU. And I wonder if it's also getting more difficult for other universities, because the bottom line is we looked at the revenue, right? I mean, we wanted to look at sustainability. And as universities in the United States are feeling more and more revenue pressure, to what
yeah,
extent can you continue to sell these programs
yeah,
if it doesn't it does. I mean, we're not looking to make a profit. We're just looking to make sure that we break even
yes.
in these.
Yeah, we are actually crossing that bridge now. That's why I mentioned that we have to justify it, and it seems anecdotal. So we need actually a study to show these people that it works. Because right now, when we're asking money for international programs, that's the first thing they say: what do you really get? What value do you get? What does the university get? And so we give them these lists, and they said, where's the data? And so it's hard. They want numbers, particularly the Commission for Higher Education, which is that rules our programs in Texas. They need hard data, and so we're trying to build that data now. We're trying to build that data. We're trying to trace our students and so forth. And then of course. There's really, as I said, the money for international programs is internal. The boss is internal. So we are fortunate that we have we have the support of our president and our administration to support these programs. So they do allow graduate assistantships, and in fact, they encourage that. And so one of the things now, in fact, that we've done, and the college came up with a novel idea, because now, we have graduate students that who cannot come. International graduate students are banned so far to come until January. And so this fall, our graduate dean came up with a solution wherein we are going to do online courses for the Chinese students and the Indian students and the Thai students and Korean students who cannot come. And we are going to enroll them as master's students, because again, there's a program already for online masters. See, I mean, you just have to be creative about how you do these things within the confines of the rules that you have in the university. So that's what we did. We are now enrolling them instead of PhD students, we're enrolling them as master's students so that then they can take the courses online outside the university.
Well, and it's coming up to 10:30, so I think we should. This was a fascinating session. I wish we had another 2 hours to discuss all of the issues that everybody brought up. I myself, I can say that I learned from everybody's talks. Each one of them was a jewel in trying to provide information. I would like, I would like to say in particular, I learned a lot about the situation in the SUCs earlier on that I really would love to dig deeper into. Um, and so I think from these discussions, and Government will step in, I mean, hopefully this will lead to more ideas and also maybe more discussions, conversations that we can have. And really with the goal that all of us have, which is to help our institutions in the Philippines continue to advance their training, their educational systems and their training. And for us in PAASE to see how we can contribute to those. We've seen some of the success stories. We've seen some of the issues that have been brought up, and I think PAASE stands ready to help in whatever way we can, in whatever manner, to address some of these issues. I wonder if Gobet has any parting words.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank all our panelist speakers, Arnold, Kokoy, Johnny, and Giovanni, and Erica. Excellent viewpoints, contributions, of course, inspiration to all of us in PAASE, and message to continue this conversation beyond our group discussion within PAASE. We can concretize, execute, follow the example of our peers. I think we'll do well, very well. And so I'd like to appreciate and also thank our audience and PAASE members who stayed late to hear everyone's viewpoint.
So with that, thank you very much. It was a good discussion, and we'll see each other again, hopefully one day in person when the pandemic is is behind us. So
Great.
see everybody and stay safe, everyone.
Stay well, stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.